Chapter 25. Battle on the Water. The roar of the Maw-Deuce echoed across the dark waters as Robert Squires unleashed a torrent of bullets toward the advancing Chinese forces. Every round fired from the massive machine gun mounted on the swift boat sent shockwaves through the air, each a statement of defiance. The last 3 miles had been hell on water. Chinese had peppered them with relentless gunfire and mortars, turning their escape into the Mississippi into a nightmarish gauntlet. The night sky was lit up with tracers and explosions, casting eerie shadows over the churning river waters. A deafening blast rocked the boat as a mortar shell pierced through the hull, narrowly missing the crew and obliterating the ship's toilet. Fragments of porcelain shards flew like deadly shrapnel, embedding themselves into the aluminum hull, turning the once pristine surface into a pockmarked testament to the ferocity of the battle. But the real threat was the second mortar, which lodged itself into a diesel drum on the deck. Its malicious intent was unknown, ticking like a time bomb, ready to unleash devastation. Bosco, hands gripping the wheel, steered the boat with unmatched skill. He zigzagged and weaved, using the boat's speed and agility to throw off the Chinese marksman. His eyes darted left and right, calculating every move, every wave, every potential path through the deadly storm of bullets and explosions. Jesse, meanwhile, held steadfast next to Robert. The cold, heavy ammo can of .50 caliber rounds was a comforting weight in his hands, a promise of continued resistance against the overwhelming odds. He watched as the deck beneath him was painted red, the grim aftermath of those who'd been caught in the crossfire. The moonlight reflecting off the water gave the scene an almost surreal quality, as if they were in some twisted dream. The Maw-Deuce roared once more as Robert squeezed the trigger, sending another hailstorm of bullets towards their aggressors, clearing a path towards the Mississippi. Each bullet was a desperate plea, a hope to break free and continue their fight for another day. The journey was treacherous, the odds seemingly insurmountable, but the crew of the swift boat, united in purpose, pressed on, those still living determined to see dawn. Their goal seemed unlikely amid the relentless chaos of battle. The swift boat was a microcosm of frenzied activity and coordination. The relentless stream of bullets from the Maw-Deuce had momentarily ebbed, but not for long. The machine gun's barrel became a glowing rod of fury, pulsating in the dark, radiating heat. Jesse's voice sliced through the pandemonium, yelling, "We need a barrel change!" "No time! Reload!" Robert's reply was sharp, his focus unwavering. With a resolute pull, he let loose his final bullet, targeting the telltale glow of an enemy's weapon on shore. As the empty ammo can clattered to the deck, Jesse seamlessly replaced it with a fresh one. Weeks of non-stop training, of drills, had etched the routine deep into his muscles still. Yet he thought, grab the end of the .50 caliber belt, slide it in, push the spring down, release. A dance of hands and metal in the middle of a war zone. Robert's hands worked in practiced tandem, pulling the charging handle once, then twice, and a final time. It was a dance they had both practiced 1,000 times before, a musical of metal and mechanics. The satisfying thud of the rounds aligning, the pull of the butterfly trigger, the rush of recoil, and the brilliant flash of fire from the gun's mouth was pure poetry. The Maw-Deuce sang once again, its song of destruction echoing into the night, a symphony to the crew's unyielding spirit and the hours of training that had made this moment possible. The cadence of battle was deafening, worse within it all. The ominous glow from the barrel of the machine gun was growing more pronounced. With each squeeze of the trigger, the once stalwart Maw-Deuce seemed to transcend its limits, now becoming a dangerous harbinger of what was to come. The heat had reached such an intensity that bullets began to cook off, firing on their own volition, turning the weapon into an uncontrollable beast. "Stay down!" Robert's voice was range out demandingly as he yelled to Jesse, who was mid-motion, reaching for another box of ammo. As the final erratic shot rang out, both men threw themselves onto the slick, wet deck, pressing their bodies as flat as possible. Jesse's eyes darted around. "What do we do now?" Robert scanned their dire situation, catching sight of a liberator, lifeless, a stark contrast to the water and the night. His voice carried a somber weight. "We should be in the Mississippi River soon. Hopefully the other side is free of enemy forces." But the dangers weren't over. Even as he spoke, the piercing whine of bullets and the deep thuds of mortar strikes continued to draw closer, water erupting around them like deadly geysers. "We're crossing the Mississippi!" Bosco's voice cut through, a beacon in the turmoil. A brief exhale of relief escaped Robert's lips, but it was immediately replaced by a coil of tension. The past dangers might be receding, but the future held no guarantees. Without their primary weapon, they were vulnerable. "Rifles ready!" he barked, rallying the remaining fighters for whatever lay ahead in the enveloping darkness. The formerly tempestuous waters of the Missouri now seemed calm as they entered the Mississippi River, reflecting the tenuous peace that had momentarily descended upon them. The frantic zigzagging Bosco had been forced to do was replaced with more purposeful, linear navigation as they aimed for the chain of rocks bypass canal. Robert moved with a sense of purpose, his eyes scanning each of his men, taking in their conditions. War was merciless, taking from him those he cared about, leaving pain and devastation in its wake. The two lifeless bodies were a grim reminder of that, but there was also hope. Andrew, though wounded, was still breathing. Robert's hands, steady from experience, moved deftly to attend to the injury. The shrapnel had torn into his side, blood marring the fabric of his uniform. Robert's movements were swift as he applied a pressure bandage to stem the bleeding. As Robert helped Andrew into position, the wounded man's pain was evident in every grimace. Yet, the same steely determination that had seen them through countless battles before glinted in his eyes. They both knew the fight was far from over. The familiar weight of responsibility pressed down on Robert. Every decision he made, every move they executed was crucial. For now they had reprieve. But war was unpredictable, and they needed to be ready for whatever came next. Dim luminescence of the moonlight faintly traced the path to the canal, casting eerie silhouettes on the water. Robert's eyes, piercing through the night, scanned their surroundings as he whispered directives to each of his remaining liberators. Weight of anticipation hung heavy in the air. The swift boat's powerful engine murmured its retreat as they glided, almost ghost-like, toward the canal. The world around them was muted, the water's gentle lapping against the boat's hull the only testament to their movement. Robert's chest tightened. The silence was comforting, but he feared also just a calm before a storm he sensed was near. Just as a breath of relief began to escape Robert's lips, it was caught, frozen by a sound that shattered the stillness they had finally achieved. It was a noise that every soldier dreaded, the unmistakable chorus of countless rifles being readied, echoing ominously through the dark. The very atmosphere seemed to shift, charged with a deadly intent. "Shit!" Robert exclaimed, the realization hitting him like a brick wall. Jesse, his voice shaky. "Oh, I think I just did." Robert's voice rose, commanding, "Everyone stand ready." The darkness swallowed his words, but his intent was clear. They were far from safe. The night was about to unfold its drama, and they were at its center. The water was like a mirror, reflecting the hushed tension of the night. From the depth of the shadows, a voice rang out. "Who goes there?" The voice was sharp, piercing the thick silence that had settled. Robert, straining his eyes into the obscurity, tried to discern a figure, any kind of sign. He felt vulnerable, yet hopeful hearing the English tongue. But hope can be a dangerous thing. He responded with a hint of defiance. "You first. Who goes there?" His hand subtly motioned towards Bosco, both men knowing that they might need to make a rapid escape. From the void, a title and name emerged. "I am Major General Simon M. Van Arsdal of the United States Army. We have you surrounded but mean you no harm. From the fight you put on getting here, it's obvious we're on the same side." Could it be? The U.S. Army? Robert's mind raced, sifting through memories of the past, looking for any recognition of the name. He treaded cautiously. "How do we know what you say is fact?" A pause. Then a somewhat bemused response. "Still floating, aren't you?" The retort, dripping with wry humor, caught Robert off guard. He let out a hesitant chuckle, his tension momentarily eased. He turned to Bosco, nodding. "Well, I guess he has a point. Wait for my signal and then head towards his voice." "Roger that," Bosco whispered back, his hand steady on the throttle, ready for whatever came next. Misty air, heavy with anticipation, clung to Robert's skin as he moved toward the bow. The water's reflection made shadows dance eerily, concealing more than it revealed. Robert's voice, though firm, betrayed a hint of the uncertainty he felt. "Rifles down. Stand down." With a quick, calculated motion, he signaled to Bosco to inch forward. Robert's posture was deliberate. As he stood tall on the bow, the bright moonlight casting a silver halo around him, he appeared like a commander of old leading his troops into the unknown. His pride, his need to protect his team, pushed him to the forefront. Every fiber in him screamed that if a trap awaited, he would face it head-on, sparing his liberators the agony. Darkness began to relent, revealing a grand spectacle. Rows upon rows of barges and tugs, anchored silently, their stillness making them almost ghostly. "You can tie up alongside here. Master Sergeant Squires." A voice, unmistakably Van Arsdale's, broke through the stillness. Robert stiffened, the hairs on the back of his neck rising. "How the hell do you know my name?" he demanded, his voice echoing slightly over the water. A chuckle emanated from the shadowy banks. "We've been monitoring your operations for months. Made attempts to reach out, but faced internal complications. There are still snakes hiding amongst us. However, we're steadily rooting them out under President Jackson's leadership." The weight of the revelation caused Robert's heart to skip a beat. "Jackson? The former president? What happened to Howard?" His voice trailed off, drowning in the sea of questions that threatened to engulf him as Van Arsdale began to bring him up to date. Robert took a moment to absorb what Van Arsdale was saying. The weight of the revelations felt immense. The last thing he remembered about Howard was the divisive politics, the nationwide unrest, and the swirling rumors about election manipulation. But he never expected this. The reality that President Howard and his entire administration were gone, taken out in the very initial strike, was jarring. "And Jackson?" Robert inquired, trying to fathom the new reality. "He's leading troops himself? Directly?" Van Arsdale nodded, his face hardened by the demands of war, but eyes full of respect for his commander-in-chief. President Jackson refused to stay holed up in some bunker. He said that in times like these, a leader must be on the front lines, feeling the weight of every decision. It's unprecedented, but it's rallied the troops like you wouldn't believe. Morale is higher than it's ever been. Robert could hardly believe it. He had always seen Jackson as a fighter, but to imagine him taking such a direct, hands-on approach in the war was both admirable and astounding. "He's currently at a base not too far from here. He's organizing a major counterstrike," Van Arsdale continued. "If you're up for it, Master Sergeant, we could use a man like you by his side." Robert felt a rush of patriotism surge through him. The events of the evening had been nothing short of a roller coaster, and now, presented with the chance to meet and possibly collaborate with Jackson himself, he felt a renewed vigor. "Lead the way, General," Robert responded, his voice steady and filled with resolve. "There is no time to waste. If you are able to surveil us, then you know we have already begun a massive attack from the west.